Hello and welcome to my first video in regards to NIE, which is a fighting game that I am currently in the process of creating. I am using Unreal to make it. I am using the Paper ZD plugin to allow me to have 2D characters function within it. As you can see right now, we have two functional characters. More or less, it is technically the same character being used for both functions and then just booleans to change what the sprite and appearance are, as there is different variables for having a tint, which the second character technically has on, but that is just because the character is actually so bright that without the tint, it becomes unmanageable. Additionally, if I press F for the first character, you can see there's a little thing in the right corner that says attack, basically just signaling that the attack button is working. And then the same thing is true for the H button for a secondary character, though the attacks currently don't do anything. The basic controls are A, W, S for the first character. D currently doesn't do anything, and F is their attack button. For the second character, J, I, and L are your movements, whereas H is your attack button. So very simple, and honestly, that makes the game really easy to play, especially as the programmer slash creator, because you can easily play both controls at the same time, and honestly, you have plenty of movement to play the game all with one hand. This game is inherently going to be very simple for the sake of the project it's being made for, though I will likely and hopefully take it further. These are currently all the little assets we have so far. A lot of these are just blank levels that I kept duplicating as I went through the process in case the old one broke. We also have a unique camera that keeps you in frame, which, if you go back to playing the game, the camera has functionalities where it follows both the players. No matter where they are, it gets the point that's most in between them. If they're really close, it stays in the same place. And additionally, there are barriers at the edge of the camera using colliders that allow the players not to go off screen. Additionally, players have functionalities where they flip directions to face each other, but that is through the level. So anytime you create a new level, you would have to recreate that. Additionally, I can just show this image of, generally speaking, what the game is going to look like, which you can already see in this situation. I still just have to add the UI and health bars, which the health bars are going to be the most important thing. Because the entire point of this game is you're supposed to be going from 3D to 2D. Namely, you're going to be a 3D model becoming a vector model, becoming a pixel model. We are currently using character spawn proper 1 and 2, and this is where you have all your options. So as the game is called NIE, we have characters N, I, and E. They just happen to be in this order because I think that's the order I created the booleans on the character. And you can mark any of them. So let's say we turn off character E, make both of them character I, because why not? Boom, instantly, now you're mirror matching. You just have a tint on this one. Because if you ever wanted to turn off the tint, you just turn off player 2, and all of a sudden you don't have a tint anymore, though that's not exactly good for the sake of the game. So having the tint is usually pretty good, though of course there's still character N as well. And these are the spawn locations, though they are not technically spawning at that location. They spawn at the locations designated through the spawn manager. And this is the third and final character, N, though all things considered, he will not be being progressed through the sake of the next 15 weeks. The next 15 weeks we'll be focusing entirely on the E and I character. We pull up PowerPoint real quick. These are the three characters, and it's sort of your Dollism, very stretchy character, kind of bounces around the field a lot. I is your grappler-esque character, very bulky, very strong. And E is your zoner character, and they'll be shooting projectiles, and that'll be their main way of attacking. For the sake of the SIP, there might just only be attacking and walking. And of course, there's jumping already, but I don't know if we'll get to the point of animations for that. If we go down, we can start just going through things. We already had these pulled up, so we might as well look at the character spawns. The second one is simply a duplicate of this. So at event begin play, it will go to spawn character active paper ZD or spawn character active paper character test, which I can also just move that over there because why not? And we can show you what that means in a second. Then you get player controller index. In the case of first player, that is 0. You possess target and you load the controls of paper ZD test, or you load the controls of character test, which character test is simply the 3D character. They both still function with each other, though you lose controls of the second player if the controls are not the same, due to the fact that it's going off a pawn controller. So what you have to do is inherently make them both the same class, and since we're going to be wanting character transition to from 3D to 2D, you're going to have to make it to the point where all of it is likely in a 3D model, just because you can add sprites to already existing 3D actors, and boom, also now you can still move with both of these, you can attack with both of them, they're still functional. The really important thing for a game like this is to lock characters to planar so they don't land on each other and bounce back and forth into the environment. So if we look at something like Paper ZD test, which is much more complicated code, we can also just straight up look at the construction script. So this is what's changing the character. So as you can see, its construction script sequence is basically asking, is player 2? If so, the sprite will now be tinted. And next you'll go to sequence, I guess to another branch. The Boolean this time is character n. If true, set flipbook to n. If the character is I, set character to I, or set flipbook to I. If the character is E, set flipbook to E, which is just a fancy thing for having the sprite be that character for Paper ZD. Then if we go back to the code, oh yeah, and then paper proper is literally just the same thing as the other one, just using player controller 1. You also have to create local player 1, and that is about it for the differences. Otherwise, you're just picking your transform values, though you could likely make a variable out of it. And that's where that's at currently. The one for, what's it called? Oh, yeah, the important thing is that they're visible. The player 2 one is not visible, it's just not needed to be visible, but these ones are, so you can actually still measure them through the spawn points. Now, the event graphs have quite a bit going for them, quite a bit. So, we just move all the way to the top. So, at event begin play or load controls as a custom event, you get controller, target is pawn. You go over here, enhance input local system. You ask if that's valid, and then you add the mapping. In the case, we're using our own mapping, which we can kind of just find right now. And I know we're doing this in the middle of everything else, but mapping context, which mapping context goes off of these move player 2, IA, move IA, jump IA, and attack IA, which is just input action, I'm pretty sure. So move IA, press A to move. One of these has a modifier. This one has the negate modifier, so it has you go backwards instead of forward. D has you go forward because it does not have the modifier. W has you go up, has you jump. F has you attack. And then in here you have just a couple, which is just for the movements, because otherwise it just calls the specific keys instead when you're elsewhere. And of course, that means J has the negate and L does not, which is just how it has to function. You would think maybe the L would have the negate as you go backwards, but no, you need the negate because technically you're moving in the negative when you press J. And then we go back here, it's just being loaded. We can go down here in advanced input IA, add movement component target mode, component movement input, world direction 1, custom. So we also have the enhanced jump action, canceled stop jumping, which is supposed to cancel out the floating, though I'm not entirely sure if that's functioning right now. Otherwise, started jump as goes to the jump. And you have player 2 jump, which is just a custom event that will call upon that same jump action when you press I. Well, we'll see those in a bit. We can also just kind of show off character movement now, which I have not messed with too much, other than the fact that I heavily increased gravity and then I increase the jump. So do something like search of jump when you're in here. You can see max jump, apex attempts, jump velocity, which I increased to 600, which is kind of a weird thing because you could say increasing gravity and increasing this are both kind of contradictory to do at the same time. Air control, air control. Uh, there should be one for something else, where it's basically how long you stay in the air, though that might just be the air control. There should be like a 0.25 value. Anywho, we can continue on. So we already looked at the jump ones. We go over here, attack, and you'll begin to see a theme. We have this all set up to where it gets animation component, target, animation instance, jump to node of a state machine for the paper ZD animation. Though since we don't have any animations currently, we are just simply having it go into a print string. Same for the custom event. I could and probably should have that go into a separate print string just so I know it's working separately, so it's more visible for a video like this, but for my own sake, I do not need that, as I am just playing against myself. And then now we get to see some similar stuff. We get to see player two. Let me just drink some water real quick. When it goes into add movement input, world direction, still on that one value. Axis value goes into scale factor. And that's just making the J and L buttons work properly. So we go now into hands move action. This one it gets a bit more complicated once you're on player two because you have to still do the whole get player two, ask is the input action valid, get player controller index one, cast paper ZD, set player two. So this is if it's not valid, you have to cast and set to player two, which is probably why it's going off of pawn values only. And there might be a way to make it to it doesn't have to be pawn values, but for the sake of this game, it's fine to have everything for me all in one character. And then you move player to target and axis values, where you're gonna pull that axis value all the way from the action value over there. And then once it is valid, you just do move player to, which is that custom event we saw earlier that just brings out the movement. So here we go into situations where you just have the buttons directly being called, so you'd have to pick those yourself. I chose I and H. I is our jump. So it asks if it's valid and goes through this whole process again where it's like, if it's not, we cast paper ZD, we get player character one, we set player two, and then we do a whole thing where it's, jump two is now being called. And we set to, if it is valid, you go to player two jump, which is once again, this is that custom event. And then H is a very similar thing where it just does that whole is valid process again, setting player two, and then bringing us to paper two attack as a custom event. And that is actually it for the character. There is very similar things going on with if I find the other character. And I still need to show a couple things on them regardless. Test grounds. Because there is actually a little bit of a difference going for character test. Because it doesn't have the benefit of being a paper ZD model. Though you can still add a sprite to it. The thing is, a lot of these are going to be the same. A lot. Like this whole begin load controls is valid. Pretty much copied over. Pretty much just copied over. Input, yeah, add input, jump, stop canceling, attack. I didn't even put in the rest of it because this one's actually going to have to function very differently than the other blueprint. Add movement is exactly the same. All this is exactly the same. I functions are exactly the same. H's are exactly the same. The difference is construction script. Namely, right now, all we have is this whole is player two. We have all the booleans already set up for the NIE and E character, though we don't have 3D models yet for each of the characters. And as you go through, you go to is player two condition. And then if it is, circle test, get element, and then you go through as this create dynamic material instance, set vector parameter value, and you set that value to color, which in this case is red. But if we go over to the new material, you can see the parameter over here being where it's at. and then you just add that, and it becomes that red color, which then becomes a tint onto this blue, and that's how you get your pinkish purple instead. A lot of these are more useless sort of things that we've had from previous editions. So we have two more things to cover before we kind of just cover what the SIP is in general. This is the camera. Very simple, very matter of fact. Has event ticks going for it on a branch if true. So that should lead somewhere. Yes, it does. So that's gonna be important. But otherwise, it's just doing a ton of math. So it gets player character 0, gets player character 1, gets actor location, gets actor location, breaks the vectors, adds the vectors together. So it adds the x of this one and the x of that one go up to here, adds the y of this one and the y of this one into here, and adds the z of this one and the z of this one into here. It divides them all, divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2. We don't need the y value, so all we take is that x and z, and then we add the camera height, which is just so that camera stays at a minimum height no matter what. Then we add it to there, and we get the location z. We take that x, and we go to the new location x, so the camera follows you. And then we get the actual location where the target is the camera itself, so it maintains its y height, which is just how close it is to the people. And currently it's set on a sweep, so it does not teleport randomly to keep up where it's supposed to be. And then, of course, you have wherever the level editor is. Open level blueprint. We have a couple different things, one of which is this tiny one over here, which is just, if I begin play, get player controller index 0, unique camera from persistent level, set view target with blend. Fairly simple, fairly simple. And then I guess this one has the math in it too. Ah, never mind. So this is something else. Though it does have the get actor locations. It just gets their X and Y's. Goes to an event tick. It gets a condition to see if one is greater or less than the other. And then it says, oh, if that is true, have the characters flip this way. If it is not true, have them flip the other way, which just ensures that they are facing each other at all times. So it has 180 on the axis or 0, or in this case, this one has 180 or 0. Though as you can see, this is player index 0, this is player index 1, this is player index 1, and this is a player index 0. So I just copied the code and flipped the player and control inputs rather than inputting the math separately. And that's how you get the game to its current point, where you can play as two characters at the same time. As of right now, you have to pick between 2D or 3D. Though once I have all the assets incorporated into a single character, you will only ever have to play as one character. And the important thing for this game is when you damage the opponent, you are meant to go down in health. So if we pull out the present, well, not down health, that too, but this is the important thing. This is the visualization. This is functionally the innovation statement. When you are at 80 to 100% health, you are maximum high poly 3D. When you go from 60 to 80% health, you are low 3D models. When you go from 40 to 60% health, you are a vector model. When you go from 20 to 40% health, you are a high pixel model. When you go from 0 to 20% health, you are this low pixel model, and then you die. So in technicality, the innovation claim is a game feature that has characters change resolution from 3D to vector to pixel art as the characters lose health, all of that pausing the game for the transformations. This will also be affecting the background, though the background is not within the scope of the SIP. For the scope of this SIP, we are focusing on two characters. I was advised to, originally my plan was to do one character and a background, and just mirror match, basically. Instead of advised to be doing two characters and not to focus on the background too much. So that's where we're at. And as of right now, the plans are to focus on the I and E character. Though I really do enjoy the idea of the N character, I can also identify that they would be the most complicated to code and to animate. Because I had to figure out how the game accepting the stretching limbs. Because the goal for his character in general is he'd be like stretching his limbs to a wall, grabbing on them, and pulling himself there. Very Luffy-esque, very One Piece in design. Whereas this one's, oh, I just shoot projectiles. This one's, oh, I can grab them. So you can probably do like a seismic toss thing, like in Pokemon, where they just bring them to the heavens and then come back down. which might be the move I have in for him. Because the actuality of this is there is just going to have one attack available. This one's just going to have a shooting attack. This one's just going to have a simple, like, kind of like little shove attack, and they're both going to do maybe like 5-10% of your health. I could see this one doing like 5, this one doing like 10, just because he has to actually get in against the zoner character. So he kind of inherently needs to be a little bit more tanky. So we'll kind of just leave it off by me, quote unquote, playing the game one more time with the appropriate characters. So this one's already set to character I, so we will compile and save that. Eventually, we'll just have this be through a character selection menu, so you don't have to just come in here manually and select your character every single time. Player 2 on, and we'll make that player E. Never had actually all the booleans on at the same time, though I would imagine it just goes in order and is like, oh, okay. Because it'll just go in the order of the sequence that is in the construction script for the character. F11. And yeah, this is where the game is at right now. I forgot to show where planer's at, but fairly simple. We also have it to where the camera does not, there's a mode on the camera where basically it just stops cutting through objects in the foreground. Otherwise, the camera would be like trying to get like really close to this other sprite we just have in the foreground. Instead, we're kind of just able to fight as we please. Boom, 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 you're getting hit. Though I don't have a hitbox set up, or technically, yeah, a hitbox, or the hitboxes would already technically be set up, though they'll probably be going off of component hit or component overlap when the hitboxes become active, or in one case when the projectile is coming at you. And kind of to show off where that one thing is, if you just go over here, character test, viewport, because why not? Planar. Constrained to plane, checked, and I constrained it to the Y plane. Just to make it fairly simple, because that was the angle that the sprites were already being imported at. And then I'm not entirely sure what the thing would be with this, though there is something I checked off to make it not cut through things. I have plenty of videos I followed, and I will try to put as many of them as possible in the description, hopefully to help other people make a game similar. This is the first video in regards to my SIP, and in regards to the video game NIE, and in regards to what my project is called, Resolution Deterioration. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you understand, though if not, it should become more legible is not the right word, but more legible as I continue and make more videos and make more progress. As I have the entirety of the next semester to work on this and the 2 weeks in between. Next thing will be adding the health component and going on from there.